Tonight on the MTN News, concentration in the meatpacking industry.
The problems that were recognized over 100 years ago exist today.
How a proposed new rule could help level the field and help Montana ranchers. Also, barely 2 weeks until the election and the votes are already coming in.
It's very convenient because a lot of our state is remote.
We're taking a look at absentee voting so far and what those numbers might indicate. And a sudden mother of four.
I'd rather be back at home where I was raised.
A 20-year-old new mom in need of some help after giving birth to quadruplets. The MTN 10 o'clock news starts right now.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. If you've ever wondered where the meat that you eat comes from, odds are it was processed in one of 4 processors. Tyson, Cargill, JBS, and National Beef now purchase and process more than 80% of all of the beef in this country. Well, many ranchers complain that's led to unfair competition. But now some help could be on the way. MTN's David J. has more on a proposed new rule from the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
The United States Department of Agriculture started the rulemaking process this summer for a law that was passed by Congress more than 100 years ago. And then within the last week, the agency released a report addressing competition in the beef industry. A new report from the USDA states 4 beef packers harvesting 81% of the nation's beef in 2021. A troubling statistic that many ranchers say impacts their bottom line.
The very same conditions that existed back then exist today. We have a disparity in market power.
When Congress passed the 1921 Packers and Stockyards Act, the USDA says 5 packers processed 82% of the nation's beef, even though that legislation was aimed at addressing the market concentration.
They wanted to eliminate the abusive practices that were directed at independent producers within the industry.
And now today, little has changed. This summer, the USDA proposed a new rule that has not yet been implemented. It essentially provides clearer tests and framework to allow the USDA to better enforce the act and ensure competitive markets while also aiding ranchers.
We're very pleased with what Secretary Vilsack and USDA has come out as rules, and we're looking forward to enforcement.
The American Meat Institute opposes the proposed rule change, arguing it attempts to circumvent Congress and the courts. The Institute's 85-member board includes representatives from the 4 biggest meat packers, JBS Foods, Cargill, National Beef, and Tyson Foods. The Institute's COO and General Counsel states changing the harm to competition standard requires congressional action. The proposal includes standards so vague that if adopted it would be impossible for a regulated entity to know how to comply. But ranchers like G.L. Stockton disagree.
What's been happening in the cattle markets is not kosher, not legal.
And he supports the battle that RCAF USA and the Northern Plains Resource Council, among others, are waging to try and make the market more competitive.
The rules are necessary to balance the disparate market power between independent producers and multinational meat packers.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
It's one of the most watched races in the nation this election, and with barely 2 weeks until voters head to the polls, Montana's 2 U.S. Senate candidates are trying to finish strong. Republican Tim Sheehy was met by a couple dozen supporters on the campaign trail today. He spoke at the Bearded Viking Mead Company on issues of immigration, health care, public land use, and veteran care. He followed his visit to Columbus with a stop in Billings this evening.
I'm really concerned the direction this country's heading in. I got 4 young kids, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And I'm worried about the future that they're sailing into as Americans.
On Saturday, Democrat John Tester spoke to crowds at McPherson Farms in Stevensville.
That's the Montana way, and that's what we got to continue to push and move out there. Everybody helping one another, making our community stronger, making our businesses stronger, and ultimately making ourselves stronger. So God bless you all for being here. Thank you very, very much.
We'll have more from John Tester and Tim Sheehy this Wednesday night on Q2. Our 1-hour-long special, America Votes, Montana's U.S. Senate race, airs from 6 until 7 that evening. And make sure to join us tomorrow night from 6 until 7 for America Votes, Montana's race for governor, as we sit down with both Governor Greg Gianforte and his Democratic challenger, Ryan Busse. Many Montanans' votes have already been delivered. Tonight, our Alina Howder is looking at absentee voting in the state and what those numbers could possibly mean.
As of Sunday, nearly 18% of absentee voters had sent back their ballots. With the election day just a little over 2 weeks away, we wanted to know what insight this might provide to the 2024 election.
It was one car after another outside the Yellowstone County Courthouse Monday, as residents dropped off ballots weeks ahead of the election.
It's very convenient.
Lynn Smith was one of those in line.
This just provides an opportunity to do it ahead of time and have my comfort of my own home and all the flyers out ready to compare.
According to absentee ballot data from the Secretary of State, nearly 18% of Montana agrees with her. This map shows how many absentee ballots have been received statewide so far, with many counties in south central Montana leading the charge. 25% of all absentee ballots are already back here in Yellowstone County, and Stillwater, Sweetgrass, and Golden Valley counties are close behind.
An election season where things are so aggressive right now, you're going to see a spike in people turning those in.
MSU Billings political science professor Paul Pope says voter registration is also up compared to previous elections.
Absentee ballots, I think, at least initially, are going to probably benefit Democrats a little more than Republicans.
Pope says that's partly because of concerns some Republicans have about mail-in voting and potential fraud. High voter turnout in general has typically been thought to benefit Democrats, but Pope says it might be too soon to start predicting the future.
High vote turnout will benefit Democrats a bit more than it will be Republicans, even though even here in Montana, Republicans will probably win the majority of their races.
Regardless of the outcome, both Pope and Smith say the most important thing is to vote, whether in person or absentee.
Absentee voting just gives everybody to show up in a manner that they're most comfortable and is most convenient, so it's a great service.
In Billings, Alina Howder, MTN News.
Quiet scene with the Stockman Bank weather cam this evening after a warm weather day. 73 the warmest in Billings today. We started off 13 degrees warmer than average at 48. The winds fairly light. It had a top gust of 27 miles an hour at the airport. But look at the contrast in temperatures. 50s, 60s across areas of central and western Montana. 70s to 80s today in Jordan and Wolf Point over into the Dakotas as well. That's because we've got a cold front moving through that's starting to create a line of showers up into northeastern Montana. Some of that pushing down closer to our area. We'll take a closer look coming up.
A man who went on a homicidal crime spree in Billings in January of 2023 has been sentenced to 140 years in prison. 34-year-old Thomas John SLA Jr. given that sentence after previously entering a no-contest plea to deliberate homicide in the carjacking of Carlos DeLeo, who was shot to death while sitting in his vehicle in the 1200 block of Avenue F. SLA then crashed the stolen vehicle before fleeing into a home on Burlington Avenue where a child's birthday party was taking place. He shot another man in the chest there before finally giving up after a 7-hour standoff with police. One of the last family-owned pet stores in Billings is looking for new ownership after decades of business in the city. Our Charlie Kleps looks into the reasons why this seems to be a trend.
If you're a pet owner in Billings, you've probably stepped inside Exotic Pets. You've had plenty of time to. The business has been around for more than 30 years. But now the current owner is ready to retire and looking for new ownership to adapt to an ever-changing industry.
I always wanted pets, and so we were here a lot.
For nearly 30 years, Exotic Pets on Grand Avenue has been a haven.
It's always exciting. You never know what you'll find. You never know what's around the corner.
Our pets, so important to us, something Melissa Lesseth discovered early, moving yearly as a kid.
Our friends would come and go, but the dogs and cats were with us for their lives. And so I know the value of a true friend.
That's how she ended up here, going into business with her mom and running Exotic Pets for decades.
I think it's got a presence of its own. It's got its own personality. It's so different than almost anywhere else you go.
But 30 years is a long time, and these days, stores like Exotic Pets are hard to find.
The pet industry has certainly changed dramatically
Montana Zoo Director Jeff Ewald attributes the loss of these stores to many different things, including the growth of online shopping, people spending more on their animals, and some ethical concerns that arose about animal treatment.
I think because of that and the rise of people wanting to get shelter dogs, I think that's led to the demise of some of these stores.
Concerns that led to many closures, but never here.
Really healthy pets to happy people.
Years of work that Leseth knows her mom would be proud of after losing her about a decade ago.
She would be happy. I feel her in this place like every day. It's pretty special.
Leseth says she isn't going anywhere until she finds the right buyer, someone who will carry on the tradition she and her mom created.
It's every emotion from excitement to really a lot of sadness that I'm going to have to walk away. But that's okay. I can come visit.
Just like so many others have for years. In Billings, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
Attention Kmart shoppers. The blue light special is now a thing of the past. The last full-size Kmart in the country closing its doors over the weekend. Nostalgic shoppers descended on the town of Bridgehampton Sunday on New York's Long Island to bid a final farewell to Kmart. The retail chain first opened in 1899 and officially changed its name to Kmart Corporation in the 1970s. By the following decade, there were more than 2,000 stores nationwide, including the one on 24th Street in Billings. But both Kmart and fellow retailer Sears later fell victim to fierce competition from Walmart, Target, and eventually online giants like Amazon. Well, ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, how these female firefighters in Lockwood are breaking barriers in an industry known historically just for men. And later, think one newborn is a challenge? One 20-year-old Montana woman just gave birth to quadruple